As you settle in and let the noise of the day slowly fade away, imagine the soft glow of candlelight moving gently across an old wooden desk. The world becomes quieter here, slower, wrapped in the hush of distant centuries. Tonight, we're going to drift through 25 sleepy facts about Leonardo da Vinci, a mind so vast and gentle in its curiosity that it still echoes through time. If you enjoy peaceful journeys like this one, you're warmly invited to like, subscribe, and share, helping this quiet space reach others who need rest. Take a slow breath in and let it go. Allow your thoughts to soften, your shoulders to loosen, and your imagination to wander into the calm landscapes of Renaissance Italy, where our story begins. Now let's move on to fact 1 and gently step into the small Tuscan village where Leonardo first opened his eyes to the world. He was born in 1452 in Vinci, a place of olive groves, winding dirt paths, and distant hills that turned blue in the evening light. He was an illegitimate child, which meant he did not inherit his father's profession or formal status. Yet this quiet exclusion gave him something else instead: freedom. Freedom to wander fields, to observe insects resting on warm stones, to watch clouds reshape themselves endlessly in the sky. As a boy, he filled scraps of paper with drawings of plants and flowing water, studying how roots twisted underground and how birds lifted themselves into the air. Nature became his first teacher, patient and silent. Even then, Leonardo seemed to understand that every leaf, every shadow, every subtle movement carried a story waiting to be gently uncovered. Now let's move on to fact 2, where Leonardo's restless curiosity guides him into the workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio in Florence. Imagine the steady rhythm of chisels tapping marble, the smell of wet clay, the soft rasp of charcoal against paper. This was where young artists learned their craft, not through loud instruction, but through long hours of watching, copying, and refining. Leonardo absorbed everything quietly, his hands learning to translate thought into form. One day, Verrocchio asked him to paint an angel in a larger artwork. When the piece was finished, the angel Leonardo painted appeared softer, more alive, as if it breathed gently inside the canvas. Legend says Verrocchio was so moved by his student's talent that he never painted again. Whether true or not, the story drifts through time like a hushed compliment, suggesting how early Leonardo's gift shimmered into view, subtle but undeniable. Now let's move on to fact 3, where Leonardo's notebooks come into focus, filled with mirrored handwriting that flows from right to left like a river moving against expectation. Thousands of pages survive, covered in sketches of wings, muscles, whirlpools, cities, and quiet philosophical questions. He wrote about how light touched skin, how water curled around stones, how emotion revealed itself in the smallest changes of the face. These notebooks were not organized or tidy, they were living landscapes of thought, layered and wandering. He carried them everywhere like soft companions. Sometimes he sketched inventions that would not exist for centuries, flying machines shaped like dragonflies, or machines that gently churned water. Other times, he simply studied the curve of a smile, the arch of a foot stepping forward. To Leonardo, knowledge was not loud or rigid. It unfolded slowly, like dawn lights spilling across a sleeping city. Now let's move on to fact 5 and wander into the dim, echoing halls where Leonardo studied the human body itself. At night, by candlelight, he carefully dissected corpses, not out of morbid fascination, but from a deep reverence for how life was built. His drawings of muscles, bones, and organs remain among the most accurate ever created before modern medicine. He traced tendons like delicate ropes, sketched hearts like intricate chambers of flowing rivers, and studied the fragile architecture of the skull. Each line he drew felt almost like a whisper of gratitude for the body's quiet complexity. In an age when such studies were forbidden or feared, Leonardo worked patiently, knowing understanding was worth the risk. Through these silent observations, he bridged art and science, showing beauty and truth often rest within the same gentle structure. Now let's move on to fact 6 and drift into Leonardo's lifelong fascination with flight. He would spend hours watching birds rise from fields, their wings opening slowly, catching invisible currents of air. To him, their movement was not magic, but a language waiting to be translated. In his notebooks, feathers become diagrams, bones become measurements, and wind becomes something almost musical in its motion. He designed machines shaped like giant bats, with wooden ribs and stretched linen skin, meant to be powered by human arms and legs. He imagined a person standing at the edge of a hill at dawn, the world quiet below, stepping gently into the sky. Though none of these machines ever flew in his lifetime, the dreams themselves were a kind of flight. They floated forward through centuries, touching the future of aviation like a soft promise whispered into the dark. Now let's move on to fact 7, where Leonardo reveals himself as an engineer of peaceful cities and flowing water. He studied rivers the way others studied books, watching how they curved, how they slowed, how they gathered strength in narrow places and softened in wide ones. Water to him was the bloodstream of the earth. He designed canals to bring fresh water into crowded towns, to carry waste away quietly, and to turn mills that hummed gently with steady motion. He imagined cities where streets were clean, air moved freely, and disease was held at bay by thoughtful design. In a time when most cities were tangled, muddy, and loud with suffering, his ideas were like distant lanterns glowing with kindness. Even his drawings of bridges seemed to breathe, arches rising lightly, strong but graceful, as if built not only to hold weight, but to honor the space beneath them. Now let's move on to fact 8 and settle into the slower rhythm of Leonardo's working habits. He was known to take years to finish a single painting, sometimes stepping away for weeks, then returning to add only a few careful brushstrokes. Patrons grew restless, yet Leonardo remained unhurried. He believed that rushing beauty would only make it fragile. Sometimes he would sit silently before a canvas, barely moving, watching how light shifted across its surface during the day. Morning light, pale and cool. Afternoon light, warm and golden. Evening light, fading into blue shadow. Each version revealed something different. To Leonardo, time itself was a collaborator. Paintings were not built, they slowly grew, like trees adding rings inside their trunks, invisible yet essential. Now let's move on to fact 9, where Leonardo's love for animals quietly emerges. He was known to buy caged birds in marketplaces simply to set them free, opening his hands and watching them lift into the sky like living notes of music. He believed animals carried innocence that humans had misplaced, and he often chose to eat little meat, disturbed by the taking of life. His notebooks are filled with careful studies of horses, cats stretching in sunlight, bears walking slowly through imagined forests. He observed how cats woke from sleep in stages, first the tail, then the eyes, then the gentle unfolding of the spine. Even in small creatures, he saw complex worlds. To Leonardo, life was a shared breath moving through many forms, each deserving patience and quiet respect. Now let's move on to fact 10 and drift into the softer shadows of Leonardo's later years in France. He accepted an invitation from King Francis I, crossing the mountains slowly, carrying his paintings with him like treasured dreams wrapped in cloth. He settled in a peaceful manor called Clos Lucé, surrounded by gardens and drifting leaves. His hands had grown weaker, his steps slower, yet his mind remained wide and luminous. He spent his days sketching, teaching, and talking softly with the young king about rivers, stars, and the nature of the soul. When he died in 1519, it was said the king held his head as he passed, though truth and legend blurred gently together here. What remains clear is that Leonardo left the world quietly as he had lived, filled with questions, gentle wonder, and a deep, unhurried love for everything that moved beneath the sky. Now let's move on to fact 11 and wander into the quiet geometry of Leonardo's mind, where art and mathematics rested side by side like old friends. He believed that numbers were not cold or distant, but deeply poetic, hidden beneath the surface of everything beautiful. The curve of a shell, the spacing of petals, the proportions of the human face, all of them whispered the same quiet patterns. Leonardo spent long evenings studying ratios, drawing circles within squares, measuring limbs with careful fingers. This curiosity later gave birth to the famous image known as the Vitruvian Man, a simple figure standing open to the world, arms stretched wide, feet rooted gently to the earth. It was not just a drawing, but a meditation on balance between movement and stillness, chaos and order, humanity and the universe. In this way, Leonardo reminded us that even the body at rest carries the architecture of stars. Now let's drift softly into Leonardo's fascination with light and shadow. To him, light was not merely brightness, but a storyteller that revealed shape, emotion, and depth. He would watch sunlight slide slowly across stone walls, noting how edges softened in the evening, how shadows deepened like pools of quiet water. In his paintings, he avoided harsh outlines, allowing forms to emerge gently from darkness, as if waking from sleep. Faces became landscapes of subtle transitions, where emotion lived not in lines, but in delicate gradients. He believed that the eye was the window through which the soul whispered its secrets, and so he painted eyes with particular tenderness, layering tiny reflections until they seemed moist with thought. Through this devotion to light, Leonardo taught the world that clarity does not always come from sharpness, but often from softness. Now let's step into Leonardo's habit of questioning everything, even ideas that others accepted without pause. He wondered why the sky was blue, why stars shimmered instead of standing still, why fossils rested high in mountains far from any sea. While many believed these shells were tricks of nature or remnants of ancient floods, Leonardo quietly suspected deeper truths, that the earth itself was old, shaped slowly by time, lifted and folded like fabric. His thoughts drifted centuries ahead of their age, touching ideas of erosion, sediment, and geological change that science would later confirm. Yet he wrote them humbly as questions, not declarations. To Leonardo, uncertainty was not weakness, but a gentle doorway into understanding. He believed wisdom arrived slowly, like fog thinning over water at dawn. Now let's move on to fact 14 and listen to the quieter story of Leonardo as a musician. In gatherings and noble courts, he often carried a silver lyre shaped like a horse's head, its strings humming softly under his fingers. Music was another way he explored balance and emotion, another language of invisible patterns moving through air. Those who heard him play said the sound felt less like performance and more like conversation, as if the instrument were speaking gently to the heart. He believed sound traveled in waves like ripples on water, touching listeners in unseen places. In music, he found the same harmony he sought in painting and science, a place where structure and feeling blended without effort, where silence itself became part of the melody. Now let's move on to fact 15 and reflect on Leonardo's unfinished works, scattered like half-written dreams across history. Many of his paintings remain incomplete, their figures emerging from shadow but never fully stepping into light. To some, this seemed careless or frustrating, but to Leonardo, beginnings held their own quiet beauty. He was always chasing the next question, the next mystery waiting beyond the edge of understanding. Completion felt final, and finality felt limiting. Instead, he preferred motion, ideas unfolding, evolving, transforming. His unfinished works invite us to stand beside him, to imagine what might have been, to feel the gentle openness of possibility. They remind us that not all beauty needs to arrive at an ending to be whole. Now let's move on to fact 16 and drift into Leonardo's fascination with water as a living force. He called it the driver of nature, believing it shaped the world more patiently and powerfully than any king or army. He watched rivers carve valleys, rain darken dust into soft earth, mist rise like breath from quiet lakes at dawn. In his notebooks, water becomes a dancer, spiraling and folding in delicate patterns that resemble drifting hair or slow-moving smoke. He sketched whirlpools as if they were fingerprints left by the earth itself. To Leonardo, water was never still, even when it appeared calm. Beneath its surface, he imagined endless motion, gentle and unstoppable. Studying it brought him peace, as if by understanding its rhythm, he might learn something about the quiet movement of time itself. Now let's step softly into Leonardo's dreams of machines that could change human labor. He designed early versions of cranes, diving suits, mechanical knights, and gears that turned like patient thoughts. Many of these inventions were never built, remaining only as pencil lines resting quietly on yellowed pages. But within those lines lived futures not yet born. He imagined people moving heavy stones with ease, exploring underwater worlds wrapped in leather and air, and protecting cities with moving walls of thoughtful engineering. Unlike others who built machines for destruction, Leonardo often dreamed of tools that reduced suffering, that softened the burden of human hands. His machines were not loud with ambition. They were careful, curious, and deeply considerate, shaped by a mind that believed progress should feel gentle, not cruel. Now let's consider Leonardo's unusual habit of writing in mirror script. From left to right, his words flowed backward, readable easily only in reflection. Some believed he wished to hide his ideas, others that he feared misunderstanding or ridicule. But many historians think the truth is simpler and quieter. Leonardo was left-handed, and writing this way kept ink from smudging beneath his resting hand. It was practical, soft, and private. Still, the image remains poetic, his thoughts preserved like secrets spoken into glass, waiting patiently for someone to turn them around and listen. Even now, scholars lean over his pages as if over a still pond, decoding the ripples of his mind long after his voice has faded. Now let's wander into Leonardo's relationship with time. He rarely wore a watch, rarely followed strict schedules, and often worked through the night when the world grew silent. Darkness brought him focus, streets emptied, voices faded. Only the scratch of charcoal and the slow drip of candle wax remained. He believed night carried a deeper kind of clarity, where thoughts moved more freely, unbothered by expectation. In these hours, he wrote reflections on aging, on memory, on how life seemed long when lived forward, yet brief when remembered. He did not fear growing older. Instead, he observed it gently, like watching shadows lengthen across a familiar room, knowing that every passing moment added quiet depth to the story of being alive. Now let's rest for a moment in Leonardo's belief that everything in the universe was connected. He saw the branching of trees mirrored in human veins, the curves of rivers echoed in the muscles of the arm, the spinning of galaxies reflected in swirling water. Nothing existed alone. Every movement touched another. Every breath borrowed its rhythm from something older and wider. This belief shaped how he lived, how he painted, how he studied even the smallest insect resting on a stone. To him, knowledge was not a ladder to climb, but a circle to slowly walk around, noticing new details each time. In this gentle worldview, humanity was not above nature, but resting within it, like a thought drifting through a much larger dream. Now let's move on to fact 21 and gently consider how little Leonardo cared for fame during his lifetime. Though nobles admired him and kings welcomed him into their courts, he rarely spoke of legacy. He seemed uninterested in how loudly his name would echo after he was gone. Instead, he focused on the quiet pleasure of understanding, on the soft satisfaction of noticing how shadows gathered beneath a leaf, or how wind changed the posture of grass. Many of his notebooks were never meant to be published. They were conversations with himself, delicate trails of thought meant only for the slow turning of his own mind. It is strangely comforting to imagine that the man we now call a genius once lived simply as a curious observer, walking unnoticed through dusty streets, carrying his questions like smooth stones in his pockets. Now let's move on to fact 22 and rest within the stillness of Leonardo's habits of observation. He would sit in public squares for hours, watching faces move through emotion like clouds passing across the moon. Joy lifted cheeks, worry tightened brows, fatigue softened shoulders. He memorized these changes, later recreating them in his paintings so gently that they felt alive. He once advised artists to look at stains on walls or patterns in marble, believing imagination could be awakened by randomness. Shapes hidden in chaos, stories sleeping inside accidents. To Leonardo, inspiration was not something to chase loudly. It drifted quietly, appearing when the mind was calm enough to notice. Now let's move on to fact 23, where we find Leonardo standing at the edge of science and philosophy, wondering about the nature of the soul. He believed the body was a machine of remarkable design, but he also sensed something softer moving within it, something without weight or shape. He wrote about memory as a form of echo, thoughts as ripples left behind by experience. Though he dissected bodies with precise hands, he never treated life as merely mechanical. There was reverence in his curiosity, a feeling that understanding structure did not remove mystery, but deepened it. In his writings, science and wonder do not argue. They rest beside one another, like twin candles burning quietly in the same room. Now let's move on to fact 24 and notice how Leonardo's legacy unfolded slowly, like fog lifting from a valley long after sunrise. For centuries after his death, many of his notebooks lay forgotten, scattered in private collections. His inventions were only sketches, his questions unanswered. Yet over time, scholars pieced together his thoughts, uncovering how far ahead of his era he had quietly traveled. His studies of flight, anatomy, geology, and engineering revealed a mind centuries beyond its surroundings. It is soothing to think that brilliance does not always arrive with thunder. Sometimes it waits patiently, letting future generations discover it like a hidden spring beneath layers of earth. Now let's move on to fact 25, the final quiet reflection resting on how Leonardo da Vinci reminds us to move gently through the world. He was not only a painter, not only an inventor, not only a scientist, he was a listener to nature, to people, to questions without easy answers. His life suggests that curiosity does not need urgency, that understanding grows best in stillness, and that wonder survives longest when it is treated tenderly. In his drawings of swirling water, in the half-smile of the Mona Lisa, in the unfinished edges of his work, we find an invitation to slow down, to look closer, to remain softly awake to the beauty that drifts quietly around us. And now, as our journey comes to rest, imagine closing one of Leonardo's notebooks, its pages whispering softly as they settle. The candle beside his desk flickers once more, then steadies, casting long shadows that stretch gently across time. His thoughts, his questions, his careful observations remain, floating like dust in warm light, never demanding attention, only offering it. You do not need to remember every detail. Let them blur and soften like footprints in sand touched by evening wind. Carry only the calm, the sense of quiet curiosity, the gentle rhythm of a mind that loved to wander slowly. May your own thoughts become lighter now, drifting, loosening, settling into rest. And as sleep approaches, may it arrive as kindly and silently as Leonardo's pencil upon paper, leaving behind nothing but peace.